What if I told you that after more than 40 years, forensic genealogy finally solved a brutal murder from 1983? Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Before we start, please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our cases. Today I'm bringing you an absolutely incredible story that shows how modern science can deliver justice decades after a crime. This is the case of Dorothy Toby Tate. November 1983. A lonely stretch of Highway 1 in California. A mysterious van parked on the shoulder. Inside, the body of a woman who was just traveling with her 2 dogs. This case went unsolved for over 40 years, until cutting-edge technology and tireless detectives finally uncovered the truth. This is the story of Dorothy Toby Tate, and how forensic genealogy changed everything. Let's go back in time. November 15th, 1983. Highway 1 along the California coast, one of the most beautiful roads in the United States, winding along the Pacific with breathtaking views. About 5 miles north of Hearst Castle, there was a pullout where drivers often stopped to enjoy the scenery. That day, San Luis Obispo County deputies received a call about a suspicious van parked there. When they arrived, what they found was horrifying. Inside the van was the body of Dorothy Toby Tate, a woman traveling the Central Coast with her 2 faithful canine companions. Toby had been shot while sitting in the driver's seat. The bullet came through the window. After killing her, the killers pulled her to the back of the van. The autopsy showed no signs of sexual assault. What was missing? Toby's brand new Nikon camera was gone. Her purse too. Other personal items had disappeared. Toby's sister Priscilla later recalled being told that Toby may have been seen cashing a $400 check nearby. The killers might have followed her, seeing an easy robbery opportunity. But one question haunted investigators for decades. Who would kill an innocent woman traveling with her dogs just for a few belongings? The early years of the investigation were frustrating. Detectives followed every lead they could. They looked into local men who might be connected. Nothing fit. No solid suspect emerged. Then, 2 years later in 1985, Toby's camera was found. It had been pawned at a shop in Bakersfield. How did they know it was hers? The family had provided the serial number. That was pure gold. That discovery led detectives to several persons of interest, men who had possessed the camera at some point. They were checked, investigated, interviewed. But again, no one fit perfectly. The leads went cold. The trail died. By the mid-1980s, the case was officially classified as a cold case, the kind every detective hates. But that inevitably happens when technology and clues aren't enough. The case of Toby Tate could have stayed buried forever, gathering dust in some sheriff's file. But the original detectives did something absolutely crucial. At the 1983 crime scene, investigators found a Coca-Cola can. It was some distance from the van, but they collected it anyway. Why? Because in a homicide investigation, you collect everything. You never know what might matter later. On that can were fingerprints, and even more importantly, drops of blood. Blood that did not belong to Toby. Back then, before DNA technology, it could be used for blood typing, a way to eliminate suspects by comparing blood types. But the detectives preserved that evidence in perfect condition, perhaps sensing that one day technology would catch up. In 2018, 2 detectives from the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Department decided to reopen Toby Tate's case, Clint Cole and Jeff Robasciotti. These are not ordinary detectives. These are investigators who simply can't stop working. Clint Cole is nationally known for his work on high-profile cases, including Nancy Woodrum and Kristen Smart. He retired in 2023, then came back 2 years later to help with cold cases. Jeff Robasciotti has nearly 40 years of experience in the department. He also retired in 2018, but quickly returned as a reserve detective, supervising registered sex offenders in the county. These 2 men just can't stay away from the pursuit of justice. As Cole once said in an interview, It's good to have someone to bounce ideas off of. That partnership would be key to solving Toby's case. Here's where the story gets really fascinating. Forensic genealogy, a technique that only started being used to solve crimes in 2018. Remember those drops of blood on the Coca-Cola can? The Department of Justice was able to develop a DNA profile from that evidence. They uploaded it to CODIS, the national DNA database, but found no direct match. They tried a familial search in CODIS looking for close biological relatives. Again, nothing. Traditional investigative avenues were exhausted. It was time to try something new. The Sheriff's Department hired Parabon Nanolabs, and here enters our next heroine, CeCe Moore, one of the world's leading forensic genealogists. CeCe Moore is the chief genetic genealogist at Parabon Nanolabs, and a true pioneer in this field. She has appeared on numerous TV shows, including The Genetic Detective. CeCe Moore has helped law enforcement identify suspects in over 300 cold cases using DNA and genetic genealogy. One of the first famous cases solved with this technology, the Golden State Killer, Joseph James DeAngelo, one of California's most wanted serial killers. When Toby's case reached Moore's lab, she decided to work on it personally. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. The Detective Cole and I worked very closely to finally bring this case across the finish line, Moore said. It was very difficult because we were initially working on the paternal side of the suspect, and it turned out they weren't connected on paper. Let me explain how forensic genealogy works because it's truly incredible. Genealogists usually work with second, third, fourth, fifth cousins and beyond. They reverse engineer someone's DNA based on those distant cousins in public databases. It's like assembling a giant genealogical puzzle. You take small shared DNA fragments and work backward, building a family tree until you reach the person who left that blood on the Coca-Cola can more than 40 years earlier. While Moore focused on the genealogy, detectives helped by obtaining vital records. Once key records were provided, Moore quickly narrowed the DNA to a close family connection and identified Stephen Hardy as the likely contributor of the blood. Once Hardy was identified through DNA, the investigation returned to traditional law enforcement. Detectives located Hardy's sister in Phoenix and coordinated with the Phoenix Police Department to collect a voluntary DNA sample. The sample showed a very high probability of familial match, effectively confirming Hardy as the source of the DNA and ruling out other potential relatives. Combined with fingerprint evidence linking Charley Sneed, investigators concluded with certainty that Hardy and Sneed were responsible. Charley Sneed was identified through the fingerprints on that Coca-Cola can. Sneed had an extensive and disturbing criminal history. Shortly before Toby's murder, Sneed shot at a woman's car in Texas because he blamed her for his pending divorce. She was his wife's best friend. In another incident, during a night of drinking, Sneed fired his rifle, witnessed by officers on a cliff above him. After Toby's murder, Sneed was arrested for aggravated kidnapping of his ex-wife's ex-husband. Family members told Detective Robasciotti that Hardy had a history of mental health issues. They believed he might have been bipolar, though likely never formally diagnosed. His mother died by suicide in her early 30s, and also had mental health struggles. Hardy married shortly before going to Vietnam and divorced soon after returning. His criminal record consisted mainly of minor, non-violent offenses. Court records place Hardy in Texas as early as May 1983, when he passed a bad check, though he wasn't arrested for it until February 1984, shortly after Toby's murder. He worked in the oil industry while in Texas and was known to have associated with Sneed during that period, though the exact nature of their connection remains unclear. After his arrest in Texas, Hardy posted bail and was never seen there again. On January 20, 2026, just days ago, the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Department finally announced they had solved the 43-year-old murder of Dorothy Toby Tate. But here's the bitter part of this sweet victory. Both suspects are dead. Sneed died in 2014. Hardy died in 2003. They will never face a courtroom, never hear a guilty verdict, never pay for their crimes with years behind bars. It was a relief when we finally discovered who he was, Moore said, but disappointing because he was dead and wouldn't face justice, and it was hard to learn much about him. Not only will justice not be served in a courtroom, but many frustrating details of the why died with the 3 people who were there that day on Highway 1. Why did they kill Toby? Was it really just for a camera and $400? For Toby's sister Priscilla, there was at least some closure. After more than 4 decades of not knowing who took her sister's life, she finally had names, faces, a story, even if incomplete. Being in San Luis Obispo to help announce the case closure was meaningful to Moore. The main reason I drove here today was to meet Dorothy's sister. The case is now officially closed as exceptionally cleared. The Sheriff's Department stated, "Given the totality of the evidence, the Sheriff's Department requested and received review from the District Attorney's Office, confirming there is sufficient probable cause to support charges if the suspects were alive. The case is now officially closed." This case teaches us several important lessons. First, the importance of properly collecting and preserving evidence. If those detectives in 1983 hadn't collected that Coca-Cola can, hadn't preserved that blood perfectly, this case would never have been solved. Second, technology keeps evolving. What was impossible in 1983 became routine in 2026. Forensic genealogy only began being used in criminal investigations in 2018, but it has already solved hundreds of cold cases. CeCe Moore encourages the public to upload their DNA profiles to sites like GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, and DNA Justice to help create more genetic connections in unsolved cases. Third, never underestimate the dedication of investigators who refuse to give up. Cole and Robasciotti could be enjoying retirement. Instead, they came back to give a voice to victims who can no longer speak for themselves. Dorothy Toby Tate was just traveling the beautiful California coast with her 2 dogs when her life was brutally ended in 1983. For 43 years, her killers remained unknown, identities that tormented her family and frustrated investigators. But thanks to modern science, tireless detectives, and a brilliant genealogist, the truth finally came to light. Charley, Sneed, and Stephen Hardy may have escaped earthly justice, but they didn't escape the truth. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave that like, share it with friends who love true crime, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss our next cases. Drop a comment. What did you think of this case? Should forensic genealogy be used more often? Would you upload your DNA to help solve crimes? See you next time. Justice may take time, but with dedication and science, it eventually prevails.